Bill Ottman, the CEO and designer of Minds, a social media platform that's open source, that's anti-spying, that's he's been on Joe Rogan twice. I got introduced to him there. Just a fantastic platform. He fights the battle. He fights the censorship battle constantly. He's getting attacked from sources and from outlets, and um, it's a fascinating discussion on social media and where it should be, where it plays, what it should be doing, what its responsibility is doing. His Minds MINDS platform. Again, we're going to be on it. We're going to publish everything on our podcast here, but just a fascinating young man. He's actually from my same area, from the great state of Connecticut, and really enjoyed this conversation. We talk about Facebook. We talk about uh, a paper he recently put out about censorship and some fascinating statistics about extremists and how they're radicalized less than 2% of the time online, etc. But it's a great platform. Bill is a fascinating man. He's fighting the fight of censorship, trying to give everybody out there a chance, and not trying to deplatform. And we get into that, what's good and what's not, what's available. But really enjoy talking to Bill. I hope to do it more often, and Minds is a great place to be. Small changes in your surfing and your web browsing, change your browser every once in a while, go over to Minds, go into different areas, will really help your overall outlook and viewership on the internet. Great conversation with Bill Ottman. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pins. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pins Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Bill Ottman, thanks so much for your time today. So why is it important that we have a anti-spying, open source, blockchain social media platform?
I mean, why is it important that we have an anti-spying network? Maybe I don't want to be spied on. It's funny that, we ask that, and it's yeah, there's this funny kind of meme going around where people are like, I don't really have anything to hide.
Right.
I don't know if I really care if they're spying on me. But I think that that's sort of like a false argument. I don't think people actually believe that. I think it's just a coping statement to justify it. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons in our lives where we want privacy, and which everybody understands. I mean, you don't make your whole life public. You don't just hand your phone to you don't publish all the contents of your phone to the world. So you do care about privacy. You're just saying that to make yourself feel better about being abused.
Yeah, I think that's it. And Bill, I see you, and I see your interviews. I see the work that you do, and it seems to me you're just fighting a battle that's just so much bigger than just the platform that you have, bigger than Minds. Is
Yeah,
that
for
accurate?
sure. It's become, well, yeah. I mean, a lot. I mean, we've been around for like a decade, and all of our original theses about transparency for users, privacy, um, ownership, monetization, rewards, putting power kind of back in the hands of the creators, that's all coming true. And, whether you look at the creator economy or the explosion of crypto, even like privacy tools have become much more popular than when we first started. And there's like a whole industry built up in all of these areas. So, that's very validating. I'm really happy to see that there's a bunch of competition in the space. Yes, it is way bigger than us. It's not about us. We're just one solution. And, I think that the momentum is going exactly where we hoped it would.
Yeah, because you're constantly let's go right into the excellent piece that you and Daryl wrote, Daryl Davis, of course, and others, the censorship effect and some of the statistics. 2% of extreme radicalization is only online. 70% radicalization alone prior to joining the group. Less than 17% radicalization is done online. And there's just always this kind of myth that gets tossed around that so much radicalization is happening online.
Exactly. I think that, it's definitely true that, I mean, yeah, you can get brainwashed online. But when we kind of have to separate cognitive radicalization with actual violent extremism. There's a
Hmm.
huge difference. And, most people who, go down some more extreme rabbit holes online do not escalate into violent extremism. The majority of that type of activity is happening offline. Um, because, if you're a real terrorist, to be careful online.
Hmm.
So you're not just going to be kind of um, risking your plans online, and they kind of have much more covert physical networks. And in the same way that you can get fall into like harmful ideology online, the opposite can happen too. So it's just as much of a tool for education and de-radicalization as it is for radicalization. I mean,
Hmm.
look, I don't think that it's a news flash that the internet is a net positive for humanity. I mean,
Hmm.
like, in the West, in kind of developed democratic countries, I think we're getting a little bit spoiled where, you know, you look at North Korea, China, I mean, they can't even access basic information
Hmm.
on the internet. It's like this huge propaganda machine. And so people in authoritarian countries look at us and they're like, well, wait a second. So you're trying to censor the internet? Wait a second.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to like get basic access to information over here. I'm trying to fight censorship over here, and whether it's Thailand or Vietnam or North Korea. So these people look at us like we're just entitled,
Right.
crazy people. So it just goes to show how you can get so wrapped up in ideology and thinking that you're doing the right thing. Hate speech, misinformation, these things are obviously problematic, but that doesn't mean that you just drop the ban hammer. And because the consequences of that are so devastating.
Hmm. Hmm. So why are there billions of people on Facebook when everybody knows what they do?
I don't think I'm not like some sort of privacy like absolutist in
Hmm.
terms of, oh, well, so here's the thing, like transparency and privacy are sort of this paradox. Like we believe completely in transparency. All of our code is open source. Um, you know, there's a beautiful thing about people, sharing information every day, being more transparent about their thoughts, and that aids in this sort of global evolution that's happening. at the same time, you want to make sure that when you are trying to share private information in a chat or whatnot, that it's end-to-end encrypted so that the network can't read your stuff. I mean,
Mm,
on mine's, all the private messages we don't even have access to. We don't want access to them. That just seems like weird to even that these platforms even want access in the
right.
first place. So I think like on Twitter, Gmail, Facebook, like it's not that there's like people reading your messages, but there are computers reading your messages, and they're scanning everything for keywords, and they're using that to target you and, you know, kind of sort you in various ways. So I think that, you know, people
Hmm.
stay there because let's be real. I mean, Instagram, all these big tech apps are really nice apps. I mean,
Yeah.
they're beautifully designed. They work well. They you know, did serve a really, and still do serve an important purpose in global communication. Um, it's just that they've kind of started to rot, and they've become completely corrupt. So I try to differentiate. The tools are built by brilliant people. Some of the smartest people in the world work at these companies. The design is amazing, but you know, the guts, or you know, the sort of um, the core of how the apps are treating users is completely corrupt. So I think that people stay there because there's critical mass there, because the tools work extremely well. So it's a combination of those things. There's not just one reason.
I mean, but doesn't it always come down to money, Bill? I mean, they're getting huge sponsorships that are paying a lot of money so they can target their messages even finer and more precise. And by doing that, they want to see what you're chatting about, they want to see where you're going, they want to chase you all over so they can target you and sell you their stuff. So, I mean,
For sure.
Facebook has a board of directors. I know you do as well, but you know, and they've got a bottom line. They're publicly traded. Is it just at the fundamental core? Is it just money?
No, I don't think it is just money. I think that
Really?
if it was just money, then they wouldn't be going on these censorship sprees, because,
Hmm.
you know, let's take one case on YouTube, which I think is pretty kind of telling. So, you know, and I'm not endorsing this person one way or the other. I certainly think that they have a right to be on the platform. But are you familiar with Steven Crowder?
I am not.
So he's like a huge conservative commentator on YouTube. Have you ever seen those like memes about like change? He sits at a table and like people come up. He has this series called Change My Mind.
Oh, yes.
So it's that guy.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and so, you know, he's a self-identified conservative. Good for him. That's his right. But he got like completely demonetized on YouTube. And, you know, he probably said a couple of offensive things or whatnot. But, you know, the reality is that they said that, hey, we're going to demonetize you because you're not advertiser friendly. But what does that really mean? Because so he's getting millions of views. He has his own advertisers on his own website.
Hmm.
There are undoubtedly countless advertisers that would love to advertise on top of him. But yet YouTube is saying he's not advertiser friendly. Well,
Hmm.
maybe to certain advertisers, fine. But for sure, there are a whole realm of advertisers that would be happy to be on, you know, to run on, you know, really conservative content. And so I think that that's just it's an excuse that they use. And you would think that it would be hurting their bottom line to be, you know, demonetizing these, you know, multi-million subscriber channels, because that's limiting, you know, the ads that they're serving. So you know, that's what sort
Interesting.
of leads me to believe that there is kind of an ideological element. Like they are willing to lose advertising revenue in order to, you know, appease a certain group of interests and advertisers potentially. So, you know, but ultimately, and like, this is the stance that we take, like advertisers should be able to choose who they run over. And,
Hmm.
you know, I'm sure that there are advertisers that don't want to run over Crowder, but there are many that do. And so but that gets into the heart of their surveillance ad model, is that they're not letting advertisers pick who they run over. They're deciding through their ad engine where they should be going. And I think, there are some controls so that advertisers can pick, but or kind of have input. But I just feel like it's a myth what they're saying, and that they should not be politicizing their customer base. I mean, if you're selling a coffee brand, why would you try to make it why would you polarize half of your audience to say, oh, no, we don't want, Trump people or Biden people buying our coffee? It's like, makes no sense from a business perspective. However, it can kind of have this shorter term galvanizing effect where, if a brand takes a political stance, they get like a certain tribe to really cheer them on. So I wouldn't be surprised if in their numbers, because you see a lot of mainstream brands kind of playing into this political game and taking sides. So I think that there may be some metrics where they say, oh, if we play politics, actually, it's good for our numbers. I really don't think that is something that is a long-term sustainable solution. I could not imagine that those numbers would hold up over time.
It's a really good point. I remember the Michael Jordan in one of the Carolinas. There was I believe, a Democratic senator, a black Democratic senator, and he asked Michael Jordan, for help. And Michael Jordan famously said, Republicans buy sneakers too, right? So,
Yep,
and that
exactly.
that furthers your point. Why, it's bad for business to pick a side, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
why would you do it?
And Jordan is a mastermind. I mean,
Yes.
imagine if he did that, like that. Is Everyone wears shoes.
Yeah, yeah, it's as easy as
Yeah.
that. Yeah. You mentioned Crowder, and certainly we could talk about Alex Jones, which hits homes. Obviously, we're both here in
Same
Connecticut.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same idea. You mentioned the Streisand effect with her, with him, excuse me, where
Mhm.
Barbara Streisand didn't want her house there in Malibu to be in Google Maps, and so she complained. But yet it ended up attracting all this attention. It was in the paper, and a fascinating kind of Streisand effect that actually ended up happening with Alex Jones when he got banned. You brought out that point in one particular interview.
Yeah, for sure. That's referenced in the paper that we wrote as well. It's it's a real thing. It's not like 100% rule. It's not as if everything that gets censored always kind of gets that blowback reaction. I mean, because it's absolutely true that censorship in certain scenarios can limit the spread of information. I mean, we sort of see that on big tech. I mean, for instance, with I don't know if you've heard about this Alex Berenson case on Twitter, but he is he's like a journalist who covers COVID specifically, and he got
Oh
banned
yes.
from Twitter for it. He then sued Twitter, got basically won to a certain degree, got let back on the platform, but he also got discovery into, to be able to request records from Twitter about kind of why this happened. And he was able to get documents of internal
Hmm.
Twitter Slack messages, which stated that the White House was telling Twitter to take him off the platform.
Right.
So the White House, and then we have other cases of this popping up. And remember, Jen Psaki actually even said this in a meeting, in a press meeting, that they were kind of in contact with social media platforms, advising them on COVID censorship and misinformation policy. So that's just pretty unbelievable that's going down. But the point being, with the Streisand effect, in Berenson's case, like, he got kicked off. Like, if you get kicked off, it's going to limit your message. And I think that he was really scared about that. Granted, I think his case, maybe even since he started winning, became an example of the Streisand effect, where he was just on Rogan the other day talking about it. and it's completely blown up. I mean, even with in the case of Minds in general, like, I don't know. I mean, there was one example where Google suspended us from some of their like app stores and some of their programs, and we try to, but we barely even use any Google products. But I was like, after that happened, I was invited on Tucker and Rogan, and it's like, so censorship happens, but there's all kinds of people who don't have an audience who just get banned, and they have no recourse. I mean, there's
Right.
no way. They don't have the audience to even engineer a Streisand effect. So most people who are getting banned are kind of screwed.
Yeah, I saw Berenson on Rogan recently, and that whole story was incredible. And I believe he plans to go on and to sue the Biden administration for some of this stuff as well. It was just incredible. What did you think of Joe Rogan's interview with Zuckerberg? Well, I would have loved to have been sitting in a room with you, Bill, during that.
Yeah, yeah. I was, you know, some crazy clips came out of it, and I think
Yeah.
Joe asked some good questions. There was a lot to be desired that I wish he had asked, and you can never remember everything to ask. And see, Joe is just so nice. I think he
Yes.
was maybe a little bit too nice, but I get why he was, and I think that you know he would probably, Zuckerberg would probably go back on, which I think is good. And
Yeah.
is similar with the Dorsey. When Dorsey went on Rogan, everyone kind of was upset with Joe the first time, and then he had him back on. And then, in the second one, Tim Pool and Vijaya, who is their head of legal, came on as well, and it turned into this amazing debate, kind of about their issues.
It's
But
wonderful.
yeah, I think that I would have asked Zuckerberg what's going on with the audio. Like why is it that people will be talking in their room and then they'll get targeted with some ad about what they were just talking about? I feel like that's this myth that is going around, and everyone kind of thinks that the phones are listening to us to target us with ads, but no one really knows. And there's oh yeah, there's uncertainty around that. I've heard good arguments on both sides. Definitely would have asked that. And I think that there was this one clip of it that we actually posted, which got like 10 million views on Twitter, which was when Zuckerberg was talking about how the FBI came to them, and for like a general request to keep an eye out for election misinformation, which he then used as the reason why they took down or limited the Hunter Biden story
Mm.
on Facebook, and they put it into, like, they punished it in the algorithm heavily right before the election. And I would have asked more details about that, about what is this communication process between the government and Facebook, and really. And Zuckerberg was also trying to say, oh, we censored it way less than Twitter. Like,
Right.
Twitter took it off, but like
Yep.
we let it on. He was trying to act like some free speech supporter. And I just I don't think the content policy itself was grilled enough. It's like, why? And he also was like leaning on the fact checkers. He was like, we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. That's why we have fact checkers doing
Right.
it. But it's like, well, wait a second. Your lawyers still draft your content policy. The fact checkers aren't drafting your content policy. They may be making sort of specific decisions on certain content, whether they fall into your content policy, but you cannot blame the fact checkers for these mistakes. Your policy specifically, has, extreme restrictions on all different kinds of speech. So I wish it had gone a little bit deeper, and but maybe it will happen in the future. I'll probably hit up Joe at some point and let him know some of those questions, so maybe we can get them asked. But Yeah, I think that you just see these guys squirm around and kind of try to act like they care about free speech, but they really just don't. And that's not to say that there's not threats involved with election propaganda and misinformation, but there's better ways to deal with it. I think that it's just total chaos right now. So many people are just getting banned wrongly. I mean, for instance, on YouTube, so many people got banned for being critical of like masks and certain things about um, the mRNA vaccines. I'm not taking a stance on that, but a lot of people got banned for that. Since then, in the last few weeks, YouTube has reversed their policies, and now it is okay to be critical of masks, and it is okay to say certain things about the vaccines. But yet, those people haven't been let back on.
Hmm.
So, I could go on forever about, all of these little hypocrisies and inconsistencies. And, they show no signs of instituting any meaningful change with regards to their content policies. So I think that it's going to be more of the same.
I mean, I just had a flash in my head of you and Joe and Mark Zuckerberg at the same table.
I would love that. I would love
I
that
know you
actually.
would.
Yeah. Tim and Ian were saying that the other day on Tim's show. And I mean, if he would be like, I would be totally respectful of Mark. Like,
Of course you would.
I'm willing to be nuanced about a lot of the challenges with scaling an absolutely monster network. It is not easy. Mistake like we make mistakes. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a more of a First Amendment based policy, so I think we make way less mistakes, but mistakes absolutely do happen. But it all comes down to what is the appeals process? You know, can you talk to a human? Can you actually um, can mistakes be corrected? And there's not a situation on Facebook where, well, first of all, it's really hard for mistakes usually don't get corrected on Facebook, and not only that, like most of the bans are not mistakes. I mean, there's people who will say, I mean, I got banned back in the day on Facebook for posting a piece of art. It was like an optical illusion. And I got banned for like 6 months for this.
What?
It was an optical illusion that looked like a hallway, but then if you kind of looked at it another way, it looked like a female body. So it almost looked sort of like a naked female body, but it was like a hallway. So, probably their, computer vision systems made a mistake, or maybe because it was an optical illusion that was against their terms. I have no idea, but I was banned for like 6 months for that. And that's just, it happened to me a couple times.
Wow.
And that's happening at scale, those kinds of mistakes. So, and it's also odd, like on Twitter, uh, a lot of people don't know this, but like full blown pornography is allowed.
Right.
That's not the case on Facebook. So there's this, it's kind of odd. Like Twitter's taking this very like overt stance on pornography, and like pornography is protected under the First Amendment.
That's
Like
right.
that's fine. Um, but then meanwhile, you know, some people can make threats, other people can't make threats. Like there's all these other kind of ideological terms that they have, which I could go down the list, but it's just everything is overcomplicated on these sites. Like people shouldn't have to be shaking in their boots about if I'm going to get banned. So that's why we've really been working on this whole sovereignty system where you own your identity, you own your you don't own your followers, but you own your like connection to your followers with your graph. So you can like the world we want to live in is that you can leave mines anytime you want, but you bring your identity, you bring your content, you bring your follower graph, and that's something that you own. Because look, we all work so hard on building up these followings.
Right.
Like it's ridiculous for a that we don't own them.
What does Facebook get right?
I think I mean, Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook even are they're beautifully designed. I
Right.
mean, they work really well. The video features, the messaging. I mean, all of the design is great. And I think that, stepping back, I mean, Web 2 with Facebook and Google and everything and YouTube, they did change the game in terms of democratizing publishing. So, it used to be that you just had the news networks, and then suddenly everyone could be a blogger, and everyone could basically become their own outlet. So that was game changing, and that's always going to be a huge breakthrough that they made, and they deserve credit for that. But they've kind of stopped innovating in that sense. The democratization ended as soon as people wanted ownership of their stuff.
Hmm. Yeah. So you went to the University of Vermont, and you know, it seems to me you had this idea of a social network. You had the ideas there. Did you think it was going to be this? What it's turned into is this kind of fight for censorship. Did you think it was going to be this difficult? Does anything surprise you now?
Hmm. I mean, yeah, I definitely thought it was going to be this difficult. I mean,
You did.
becoming growing into like hundreds of millions, if not billions of users is, I mean, that's just a incredible task. I mean, only a handful of companies have ever achieved that in existence.
Right.
So obviously, it's sort of a David versus Goliath task in general. Um, you know, I I did know that the censorship was going to be really bad. Yeah, I mean, because originally I was sort of asking myself, like, okay, so none of these big social networks are open source, so that's a big opening for us.
Yeah.
Just being transparent and open source with the code and the algorithms is, that's a big differentiator. But then in terms of the content policy, like if you look at the top 10 sites in the world now, or top 100, it's really funny actually. It's like all the big social networks, and then you got like a bunch of porn sites. And, you know, and some of even like places like I think 4chan is on the top 100, and so you've got like these kind of more like underground um forums. And I always found it really fascinating that we could visualize this sort of like split in like where global consciousness and attention was at just by looking at those sites. And so you've kind of got this world where, you know it's like this type of content and speech is happening on these sites, but then meanwhile, most people are, on their own. I'm not, not everybody looks at porn and stuff, but I don't know. We all growing up with the internet would like go looking for crazy websites, and
Right.
you know, it's something that is very everybody is like wants to kind of have access to all the information, because I just don't think that you can be an educated person without really kind of going down some rabbit holes. Like you need to do that as a person. It doesn't mean that you're going to adopt like the ideas or like want to go seek out that content repeatedly, but it's sort of like a necessary exercise to go through to like understand where your boundaries are, understand like learn about humanity. I mean, there's this one site where I know one of the founders, his name's Hayden at LiveLeak. LiveLeak is this interesting site, which is it's not really the same as it used to be, but it used to be this like site. It was like a video site where you could see just craziest videos, war videos, all these like a lot of graphic stuff, violence, like just crazy town videos. And there's something just very human about it that it's like that exists. Like I don't want to shield myself from the reality of what's happening on this planet, So, because in order to have an informed opinion about any topic, you need to have access to as much information as possible so that you can be educated to even develop an opinion that is valid. So, this idea that we should be, where all of our youth are kind of growing up, and I'm not saying give kids access to all the crazy stuff until, they're 18,
Hmm.
but you need to know what's going on in order to know what's bad. If you never see what's bad, you can't know what's good.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I take a pretty open view on it, and I think that it's a necessary process for people to go through, not be told by Facebook like what is acceptable.
Right. Right. So I started my tech company just to support, network support and application development firm in the 90s. And we ended up making some internal tools. We brought them to market and we started selling them. But I mean, that's a pure business to business model. So it's a much more niche, audience. We've got over 8,000 of these service providers using some of our apps. It's a different model now where advertisers ask to advertise in it and we give it away. But, so what keeps us up at night in that model is just that those businesses are actually gaining expertise from it and hopefully it's helping their business run. Your model obviously is very different as it's going to consumers, it's going to people. So what keeps you up at night with Minds?
I mean, yeah, just making sure that the user experience is smooth, making sure that
Hmm.
everything is working for people. Um, keeping a stable infrastructure going, supporting millions of people is hard work.
Yeah.
So, you know, and like little bugs sneak in there sometimes, like, whatever it is, the email verification when you sign up doesn't work. And then so you're like, oh, damn it. Everyone who signed up for the last 12 hours, like, little stuff like that happens once in a while. And that's really that it's frustrating, but it happens to everybody. I
Right.
mean, even it even happens to the biggest apps in the world where stuff like randomly, bugs leak in. So, but in terms of what keeps me up, like definitely worried about deplatforming, but at the same time, we've structured ourselves so that we're quite independent. Like even at like there's no, we can't even get banned by clouds. Like we have a multi-cloud architecture. So even if Amazon had an issue with us, it wouldn't matter,
Wow.
which isn't the case for a lot of applications that are like very locked into services on certain clouds. And then beyond that, we're also using like decentralized protocols. There's this one that we've started integrating with called Nostr, Nostr, which is a open protocol basically powered by cryptographic keys where everybody has a key. So now everybody on Minds has crypto keys, which are your public key is kind of like your identity, and you can take that with you, and you can kind of use other clients, so you can access your Minds content actually through other clients that are built on Nostr, like other apps, basically. And so that's been a huge deal. It's all very new tech, and but it's going to be exploding over the next 5 years because it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a mainstream brand or a small content creator. Like the reality is that people want ownership of their network.
Hmm.
And it's just not worth the risk to not have that. Because you never know. You never know what's going to happen with the algorithm. You never know what's going to happen with these companies. You spend 5, 10 years building up a following and it gets stripped from you. I mean, it's
Wow.
just a bad business decision to be overly reliant.
It's fascinating to me that it seems to me that you're more concerned about the technology itself than than the censorship, than that.
Um, I mean, it's not that I'm more like how do you mean? Like censorship in what sense?
Well, Seems to me like you're fighting the big fight, Bill. I mean, you're getting tackled by Vice and these, all of these, you know, uh, media outlets, and it's all about censorship. It's all about deplatforming. And uh, when we talk right now, I ask you what keeps you up at night. You mentioned a lot of the technology, which, by the way, I'm really fascinated with. But it just seems to me that you're getting beat up a lot by the censorship issue more than the tech, and I don't hear you talking about the tech as much like you did right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's both. It's
Mm,
both. I mean, they're pretty intertwined. I'm very fascinated with the censorship stuff. I mean, I'm concerned with the censorship on one hand because when these censorship events happen on other networks, like we'll see a lot of growth from it, and it's like it's built into our value proposition with the world. So I think that I'm I might be talking more about the tech now, but I don't think that that is necessarily indicative of my overall interest. I mean, we just wrote like a huge paper about censorship, so I'm pretty obsessed with censorship.
yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Yeah, which you should be. What explain the experience. What was it like being invited to the White House in 2019 by the Trump administration for the social media summit?
It was okay. I think that it was pretty fascinating that they did that. Um, I mean, the fact that the president of the United States was banned right after,
Hmm.
his term was shocking, and he knew that that was coming. I think, which is why he held that summit. It wasn't really as productive as I would have liked.
Mm,
I also don't think that he invited enough people on the left who have experienced censorship.
uh,
Most people associate the deplatforming with the right wing, but there's actually a huge impact on progressive, like anti-authoritarian voices on that side as well. And so they weren't really there, which I think was a missed opportunity, and it caused that summit to be pigeonholed as
mm.
just sort of like a right wing thing. So that was one criticism, but I overall, like, there were some interesting speeches that were given, and I think it was a relatively unprecedented type of event for the president to be talking about social media censorship. So I think that that's good. I think that it's too bad that Trump is such a polarizing figure
Mm.
because um, it's a really important topic, and I think that just because he was the one holding it, it caused a lot of people to just shut down. Like a lot of for a huge portion of people, anything that Trump says is just like they just
Right.
want to do the opposite. So I don't. I think that unfortunately, free speech took a bit of a blow during his term, just because he supported it.
Right.
So the left sort of started attacking it, and that's just. I mean, it's not his fault that they did that, but yeah, I don't know. So it was fine. It was nothing like breakthrough though.
Mm. Why should consumers? Why should people use Minds?
Just to diversify, to protect yourself. The
Mm.
thing is too that uh, a lot of brands, a lot of individuals will be posting on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and they barely get any reach. Even though those sites have huge user bases, the algorithms are set up in a way that makes it pretty hard to grow organically. Even if you advertise, it's honestly, you don't get great results. So even though we're much smaller, like our community is very kind of dedicated and active, and we see like creators getting way better reach on Minds than they get on Twitter.
Hmm.
So because at the end of the day, it's irrelevant if the network has a billion users if you can't reach anybody.
Right.
It means absolutely nothing. But we have this whole system where you can earn exposure, through, so you earn tokens for engagement that you receive, and then one token is worth 1,000 views. So you can use your tokens that you earn just for participating to boost your content and kind of get seen. And it's one of the more popular features on the app, and people really love it. So, you actually have a event out of the void of your your immediate following, which makes it much easier to grow. So, there's that. And then it's just like you gotta participate in things that you think are important. I mean, if you think that these ideas are important, then it's good to use apps that care about those ideas. And it's not just us, it's your browser, it's your, all different apps. Like, use apps. It's not saying ditch big tech completely, but also, poke your head into these other places once in a while, because your attention is what causes things to grow.
Hmm.
So it's easy to just stay addicted to Facebook and, only use like Chrome or Safari. But it's a very easy habit to change, actually. Like, if you just change your default browser, you make Minds like a regular stop, it has a huge effect in mass when a lot of people change their like small behaviors like that. So yeah, I think that it's just a matter of, if we want to see the world change and move towards uh, these types of principles, then you got to walk the walk a little bit.
Yeah, when I first saw you on Rogan, I saw you the first time. Then, of course, I saw you with Daryl Davis, who's an incredible, incredible man. Of course, I looked at Minds, and I never went back. And then when we were going to talk, I went through and I set up, the podcast account. I uploaded an episode. So I'm going to start continuing to do that, and I'd encourage others to do that as well. Like you said, to kind of broaden, and just changing those kinds of habits will make will make a big change.
Nice. I just found you, so I'll help you figure out how to get some tokens and blast your episodes a little bit harder. So good stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. Also, we have the mobile apps as well, and it's just kind of like altering your routine, like, because we're all so addicted. I'm not innocent. Like, I use YouTube pretty aggressively,
Sure.
um, and but small moves mean a lot, and can have huge impact. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like, changing your diet, kind of. It's not easy, but
Oh,
once you do, it becomes easier and your body becomes less dependent on the crap. And then you start to find the value, and your gut biome changes.
yeah, that's right. How's your wife doing? Yeah, I remember you talking about that. She had to change her whole diet. You went from vegan back to non-vegan, and she went to another diet. Did
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. She's great. We're about to have another baby. Got a boy
Congratulations.
coming in like the next week, so
Whoa.
that'll be huge. And
Congratulations.
yeah, no, it's been, yeah, we were both vegan for years, and
Yeah.
then we've been mostly like, yeah, eating lots of meat, and the whole, well, not carnivore. We eat a lot of fruit, yeah, fair amount of like raw dairy, and I mean, that's all you need. I feel way healthier. I never would have expected to. I had totally accepted I was never gonna eat meat again,
Hmm.
and because I do still, I'm not one of those people that like completely rejects veganism. I think that the ethics behind it are, really interesting. And there's this one particular vegan who I think is a great debater and has solid arguments. This guy Earthling Ed, um, and the main issue with it, which I don't think he has a great answer for, is that global veganism really does rely on supply chains and like a globalized world, because in certain geographies, it's just not, you just cannot get access to a diverse amount of vegan food. And, there's also all kinds of issues with like the almond industry and,
Mm,
you know, the big vegan world, like, it does actually cause um, a lot of animal death in terms of the agriculture. That being said, like, I mean, yeah, it's just nuanced. Like, if it's better to be probably a, a certain type of vegan than to be eating like all factory farm food and like
mm,
crap from McDonald's and Walmart. I would rather be a good vegan than, eat that type of meat. But if you're eating like really good quality or hunted meat, and that's kind of the holy grail. But I don't know. I don't really know where I think the world is going to be in like 1,000 years, because I think that over time, as we learn more about consciousness, we're going to learn that it's like how deeply messed up it is how we're treating animals, and it's just going to become more and more obvious and
absolutely.
unacceptable. So I don't know where we're going to be. I'm not stuck in my ways either, but the reality is that vegan food is harder on your digestive system, which my wife's story like really proves. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, like, she had Crohn's disease and was being told by doctors, you have to take intravenous this drug called Remicade for the rest of your life. Every
Right.
6 weeks, you got to go. It's basically like chemo. And she was like, no. Started eating just like kefir, probiotics, salmon, soft vegetables, cabbage juice, and completely reversed all the ulcers and Crohn's, and now she's in remission.
It's amazing.
It's insane. And it's like the gastro doctor is so clueless, like had no idea about anything having to do with the with any of the studies related to cabbage juice or kefir or and pro, like, it's like these people aren't nutritionists, and
Right.
doctors, it should be a requirement to be a nutritionist to even be giving people medical advice. So I think that's becoming more common knowledge, but it's just so terrifying how doctors will just lead you down these roads, and they're actually completely uneducated about alternatives, which are it's not just like woo woo, naturopath
Right.
alternative. It's like, there's real studies and validity around these strategies. So yeah, it's good. I ate a burger for breakfast.
Very nice. Yeah, I think I think the biggest issue, or one, at least top three issue in our country, is just obesity and being overweight. And the American diet is addicted to sugar, and which brings me to my next point. I started my company back in the '90s, like I mentioned, and I had stopped working out, Bill, and I was eating a lot of pizza. It was like great pizza in this state, and soda. And next thing I know, I was up to 340 pounds. The doctor said,
Wow.
look, if you don't lose, if you're pre-diabetic, pre-hypertensive, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. And that's all I needed to hear. I didn't tell anybody, but I cut everything in half. I only drank water instead of the sugar. And I lost 140 pounds. People ask me, how did I lose it? Like it's some secret. And I said, just discipline. Right. There's everybody wants, like, doctors prescribe a pill. You're sick, you're your wife, you just got to take medicine. Just do it yourself. I just did it myself. So the common thread I have when I talk to people is discipline, and I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life. Do you consider yourself disciplined through college, through creating this platform,
Mm.
and all the debates that you have with censorship? Where does discipline play a role in your life?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I grind hard, and it's just being able to align, my company, what I do for a living, with what I am intellectually interested in is like, that's the gold mine, because it's so much easier to be disciplined when you love what you're being disciplined about.
Mm,
So I think that that's kind of the first step, is to do the best you can to position yourself in a place where you can have that alignment. And then, in terms of like health stuff, I've always been like relatively healthy and active. It's more, honestly, fitness wise, over the last five, I've always been very skinny. And but like was always very athletic, and I've kind of gone through spurts of like trying to gain weight and trying to grow muscle. In the last couple months, it's some of the best I've ever done. We've been going like at least 4 or 5 times a week, and like doing heavy lifting. Having a I have
nice.
a buddy who works with mines, who we've been working out pretty much every day
That
together.
helps.
Having a support
Yeah,
system around you to help co-motivate is completely essential.
right.
I mean, I've done these challenges before with friends. Like we did a burpee challenge. I've done like where we did 100 burpees a day for 100 days, and we had like a huge group of us doing it. And we had a text thread where we're all like updating each other every day, making sure you're staying accountable. Accountability is absolutely huge, and doing things on your own. I mean, I see in your case, it seems like you found that inspiration, with kind of the risk that your doctor purveyed to you about being able to see your daughter graduate. Obviously, that's extremely powerful. I haven't had like and I think in my wife's situation, it was like, yeah, it was like an
Mm,
existential health risk that kind of got her into it. But if you don't have an existential health risk, I think there's a whole group of people who are sort of in this middle ground world where they don't get disciplined about health because they don't have any urgent problems, but that doesn't mean that they're healthy. And so that's where I think the community accountability to try to get to to try to reach goals together is really important, because yeah, if without the existential stuff, you do need help. You need something to help drive.
yeah, absolutely. You need some kind of outside motivation. Did you ever you were talking to Joe about making the 100 the burpee something to do throughout the company and you were kind of bouncing that off him. Did you ever make that happen like a challenge?
No, no, I don't think that it's
It's hard to do.
it's hard. I mean, yeah, I think that it's a little bit too invasive to do. I never
Right.
tried. I kind of brought it up. There were a couple people that were interested in doing it, but you know, I think that it's probably better for people to do that kind of thing in their own. I know that some companies have like exercise perks. I've heard
Sure.
um I would do it. I would do it, but yeah, haven't done it yet. I don't know. We didn't get enough interest that I really thought that it would make sense.
Hmm. And I get a decent amount of pushback when I talk about discipline. I don't demand everybody to be disciplined. In fact, I'm not disciplined in many areas, but the biggest pushback I get is, people need compassion more than discipline, or they need more love than discipline. And I don't think it's kind of it needs to be everywhere. And I just want to hear people's view on it. I'm not here to debate it. I just want to see what their perspective is. But I do get a decent amount of pushback from it. Are you surprised by that?
Surprised that you get pushback?
Yeah, on discipline. I mean, some have like a militant, that they think, well, I don't discipline my children. I'm not really discipline isn't part of my life. And I said,
Discipline, it means, yeah, I think it sort of means different things. It's like in one sense, like you're saying, like disciplining your children has a little bit more of like a militaristic kind of idea around it. But I think that generally speaking, discipline is more so just about training yourself to do things that you know you don't necessarily want to do, but do kind of ultimately want to do. And pushback on it, that yeah, that doesn't really make too much sense to me. I think that people who push back on discipline are probably doing that for a reason. but people can have their own implementations of it. Like, I don't think that you need to be disciplined in every area of your life, as long as you have some things that are. Being disciplined in every aspect is, that's kind of missing some of the joy of life.
Yeah, reality as well.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think you can go overboard, but without it, it's just like you feel like crap. So I don't know. Yeah.
Hey, maybe there's some censorship on discipline that's going to start arising. I hope not.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know this from personal experience, but like a lot of the stuff with fat shaming
Right.
is become like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. During the pandemic, we never heard the government once say, "Hey, this is a great time for everybody to start walking. This is a great time for America to get in shape." You never hear a politician say obesity and overweight, which I believe is over 70% in our country. Let's do something about it. You know, because the constituents will say, "Well, he or she is fat shaming me. They think I'm fat. I'm not going to vote for them." So no, they don't. I think that's what they talk about. Uh, I lost the weight, Bill. I'm not remarkable at all. I just focused and got there, and I've kept it off. Of course, I could stand to lose a couple more now, but I could do it. So fat shaming is a very tough topic. Do you run into that a lot in mines?
I mean, not really. Like,
Good.
I mean, people talk about obesity for sure. I think that the thing with fat shaming is that it is sort of a censored topic. Like, people will, I wouldn't be surprised if people have been banned from Twitter or something
Hmm.
for talking about it. And yeah, I think that to each their own. I mean, some people I've heard, fat shaming has helped motivate them.
Right.
Other people, it's probably not the right approach and can just cause them to become more depressed and, more unhealthy. So, typically I don't think that shaming is the right approach, but, confronting problems when they're presented, it's not so much fat shaming that I think should be promoted, but like, you know, confronting obesity is obviously necessary, and other health ailments. It's not about one or the other. Another thing that I am very disciplined about is walking,
Hmm.
which particularly for obese people, but honestly anybody in any like, walking is amazing exercise.
Yes.
It is it is the easiest thing to do that has the greatest impact. It gets your heart rate up just enough, it gets your brain going. I think some of my, most creatively when I'm walking.
Hmm.
And so that, yeah, I I can't recommend it enough. And it's weird that it even has to be recommended because it's just walking. But
It's
like,
true.
people who are feeling stuck, or like, "Oh, I hate running, I don't like working out," like, just walk. I
Yeah.
mean, if you like, you got to walk far. I mean, go walking for like a couple hours every day, but like, it's not hard to walk a couple hours. So I don't know, did you walk much in your process?
Yeah, I actually, I worked out every day. I ended up doing some triathlons. I ended up, doing some CrossFit, but some simple tips like when you go to a store, park the car far away.
Mm,
So you walk a little. Don't take any escalators or elevators, take stairs. Just some simple, like you mentioned, some simple things about changing your browser, changing some of your kind of small habits like that. Those things end up stacking up and doing really well. I happen to play golf, and so I walk when I play golf. I push a car. I used to carry it. I hurt my shoulder. I walk. It's about 5 mile walk. Of course, some say it's a bad walk, we're spoiled, but just walking like that is really simple to do. And you mentioned fat shaming before, like you had the singer Adele who lost a lot of weight, and people are upset with her because now she's fat shaming those that were, it's a hard area to navigate. And Well, I only hope that things get better there because it's a serious issue in our country. Bill, what motivates you?
Um, I would say, my family, desire to kind of know what's going on in the world. I definitely feel like, and this gets into a lot of, the mind's focus on transparency and censorship, but like, in a sense, I'm using like my personal, I'm trying to solve problems for myself through the app.
Hmm.
So, I want a network where I can, have full access to information. So, I build it. But I really want the world to get to a place where, where we have access to the reality of what is going on. Like, I want to know what the government's up to. I want to know what corporations are up to. I want transparency. I want disclosure about all of the famous conspiracies. Like, I want to know why we're here. I want to know what is going on with consciousness. I want to know, I don't want to just coast through life not getting to the bottom of reality.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, a lot of that is behind what I'm trying to do. Like, I want to learn what is going on, and I think that's kind of unique. I don't think it definitely, there's an ever growing population of people who are truly inspired by like figuring out what's going on in the world, but yeah, it's a big one for me.
Hmm. And how do you measure success?
Um with the company or with myself?
Both.
I think that I just sort of observe, well, with myself, like, I'm learning more.
Hmm.
And I think that we're seeing the world around us kind of seek this information more. And the internet is helping with that. And then, with minds, like, we measure success based on the reaction of the community, based on metrics, growth metrics that we track. And um but you know again, even with our app, it's like, yeah, we have analytics and whatnot, but at the end of the day, for me, it's like, do I want to use it? Like,
Hmm.
it's not that I don't want to be like, I don't want to make myself addicted to it. We're not trying to engineer addiction in the way that big tech apps are, but how we were talking before about, there's sort of this common design among big tech apps, and like there's these certain features that people are sort of reaching consensus on, which are incredibly valuable. I want minds to kind of achieve that and I want to know that I can open minds and get more of a real taste of what's going on. So, when I open, and if I check Twitter, I know that it's going to be a little bit dumbed down. I want to open minds and know that I'm getting a little bit of a stronger dose of
Hmm.
reality.
Hmm. And do you use like this is what we're talking about now. If I wanted to find out more about discipline, in the episode that I put up, I hashtag discipline. Like I could just do that the same way that I could do those other platforms. I could search for discipline, or I'm a big English Premier Soccer fan, so I looked up Manchester City yesterday when they were playing, and I just found a couple of pieces on that. I mean, that's the way you would use it as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Go down the rabbit hole for sure.
Hmm.
It's going to be, it's not quite, it's not necessarily, as we just don't have the sheer volume of live content that some of these bigger networks are. So you kind of got to go find, sometimes you gotta really dig a little bit harder,
Mm,
but they're there. Like I just followed you, so you can follow me. You can check out my feed, like go into a rabbit hole from there. And we find that people on Minds are very exploratory and kind of trying to connect with new people as opposed to necessarily like their friends or
hmm,
people that they already know. And which is pretty unique. I think that that's more similar to like Reddit, whereas like Facebook, you're like trying to connect with your friends.
right.
Twitter, you're like following like news. Mine's is very much about like connecting with new people,
Hmm.
expanding your horizons more. So it's not always about just trying to find, you know, or limit yourself to like necessarily like what your expertise is in.
Very well. Well, Bill, thanks so much for your time today, man. I really appreciate it. I see your interviews and I read your stuff, and I just get the feeling, man, you're just fighting the fight. And sometimes I see you and you seem a little exhausted, like you're like, like you're just fighting this, man. And I just like, how can I help him, man? I mean, I'm with you. I just see you. I see you
I still
fighting
play
it.
golf. You said you play golf.
I do play golf. I play
think we're
tennis. I
pretty
play
nice.
jujitsu. I have some outlets,
Well, I'm down. It seems like we're only like 25 minutes away from each other.
That's
So
true. We get
maybe
together and have a
maybe I'll challenge you in tennis in the fall. I'm about to have a baby, but after that, let's link up. And yeah, man, I it's funny that you say that. I'm definitely in the trenches,
yeah,
and yeah, it's not easy, but it's all good. Like I enjoy the process, and I'm also not trying to be impatient with it. It's weird too to be thrown in this situation where people want us to be competing with Facebook
right.
and Google. And that's a little bit of a unique position to be put in. Like most times you start a company, and if you had as many users just as we have now, it would be like, okay, we were
We're
successful.
done. Yeah,
We're done. But
yeah.
for us, like it's the sky's the limit. Like there is no limit. There's success is only like becoming bigger than Google and Facebook. We absolutely can and will be a successful company before reaching um those milestones. But it's a weird dynamic where we're being pinned against these Goliaths. So I think it's harder than I think most startups because of the expectations that people have for us.
Right.
So but whatever. I'm not complaining about that. It's also flattering to even have that be something that people
That's true.
consider a possibility. So
Right. Right.
I'm not complaining.
Right. It could be worse. Yeah. It definitely could be worse. Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time today. And yeah, I'll take you up on that once your baby's born and get everything situated there. We'll get together and have a drink and maybe play some tennis, whatever it takes. But thanks so much for your time. I hope we get to do it again. And I look forward to diving deeper into Minds and, being part of this community.
Thanks so much, Joe. Great talking to you.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinn's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinn's Discipline Conversations.